Kevin O'Sullivan on Talk Radio.
The home of common sense.
Talk first. Talk fast.
Listen on your smart speaker.
Watch it live on your smart TV.
Kevin O'Sullivan on Talk Radio.
Yes, keep calling in. We'll be taking your calls in just a few minutes. 0344 499 1000. Plenty to talk about. Do you know what to talk about? Can Boris hang on? People give me a hard time saying I'm Boris bashing. I'm not. I'm just laying out his predicament, and he's in big, big trouble. If you have any ideas about how that guy can survive, very happy to hear them. I'd be interested. 0344 499 1000. Now, you may remember the Colston 4 verdict a couple of weeks back. The 4 Black Lives Matter demonstrators who dragged Edward Colston, the slave trader's statue, across the towpath, pulled it off his plinth across the towpath and chucked it into Bristol docks. In effect, Edward Colston ended up in the court, Bristol court in the dock, because the Colston 4 were acquitted of criminal damage because this guy was a slave trader, and therefore it was decided by the court they had every right to do what they did. Now, the government's Attorney General, Suella Braverman, indicated that she was going to appeal against this decision because she felt it was emotional and did not take regard of the facts that this statue was damaged. It was pulled across the towpath and chucked into the sea, which to most observers does seem like a bit of criminal damage to public property. So she was going to appeal, but apparently she's quietly shelved these plans because she fears the government might not win this appeal, and therefore the Colston verdict will be enshrined in law forever. Last week there was 3 demonstrators at Extinction Rebellion demonstrators from a group called the Shadwell 3 who blocked a train in London on the Docklands Light Railway. They were acquitted by a court because they claimed they had the right to do what they did, to block that railway, to obstruct the railway, because they had fears for their grandchildren, not their grandmothers. Maybe they did fear for their grandmothers as well, but they were fears for their grandchildren, and also they were Christians, and it was a question of their Christian faith. So that's another issue where perhaps a jury's verdict ought to be challenged by a government that wants the kind of rule of kind of sensible law. But I wonder what our next guest thinks. That's lawyer, author and broadcaster QC, Chris Daw. Good evening, Chris.
Good evening, Kevin. Do you think we could be the Talk Radio too?
Yeah.
We can do whatever we like.
I think we are now. I hereby announce that we declare we are the Talk Radio 2. I heard you earlier talking on Talk Radio, funny enough, talking about the Colston 4, and I think I kind of disagree with you. But you stand by the jury's decision, if I read you right.
Yeah, let's be clear about this. That the jury didn't decide that they could do whatever they liked or that what they did was right. The jury just decided they were not convinced beyond reasonable doubt that they were guilty of a crime, which is a very different thing, because juries are not there to make moral judgments or what's right or wrong. They're there to return verdicts on the indictment in the trial. And if they're not sure of guilt, they have to return a not guilty verdict. So, I'm given that juries are not allowed to discuss why they reached their verdict, no one's allowed to ask them. All we know is they decided that these particular defendants were not guilty, and it doesn't set any sort of precedent for anyone else. So, I don't know if you want to get into the whole area of the Attorney General or whether she will or won't.
Well, yeah, that's my question. I mean, you can understand, though, Chris, why Suella Braverman indicated, she said she was carefully considering lodging a government appeal against this, and the reason for that was that, millions of us saw on television these demonstrators pull with a rope this statue off its plinth, haul it across the towpath. Meanwhile, I think daubing it with paint, kicking it around and throwing it into the sea, which to many of us does seem like a clear case of public or criminal damage to public property. But the emotional line was, well, this guy was a slave trader, so he deserves it. You can see what Suella Braverman's original thinking was, and apparently the reason she's shelved this is because she fears that if she loses this appeal, then this kind of defence will be enshrined in law. I would have thought the government should have the guts to continue with this case.
No, quite the opposite. You see, this is the problem. When the Attorney General, who's a law officer of the Crown and supposed to exercise a bit of independent judgment and not just be a party politician, when they come out after a jury verdict and start sounding tough on the media about appealing and we're going to try and overturn this, well, it's just ludicrous. For a start, you can't overturn a jury verdict. There is no appeal against a jury verdict. So the idea that was kind of peddled in the media that somehow the government would get this overturned was complete legal nonsense to start with. The only thing that the Attorney General can do is refer the case to the Court of Appeal to examine whether the judge made any errors of law. And I've not heard any suggestion the judge did make any error of law. So the sort of the immediate kind of, we've got to appeal this because it's wrong because of what we've seen on the telly, which is the kind of mindset that you're describing, is ludicrous coming from the Attorney General. And what should have happened is she should have taken the time to listen to her legal advisors, to actually apply the law properly. And if she'd have done so, she would have realised it was a futile and pointless effort that was never going to succeed. And she would take the risk that the Court of Appeal would be quite angry about the case being referred to them and would say the judge got it absolutely right, and the Court of Appeal have the power to enshrine in law the way that cases like this are dealt with. So she was taking a big risk. Whether she's actually going to drop it or not, we don't fully know. It's just a media report at the moment. But if she does drop it, frankly, my view is it will be the right thing to do.
I thought it was a bizarre defence, though. It was Edward Colston in the dock more than the Colston 4. It was that this guy was such a horrendous individual. By the way, I don't particularly accept that. I mean, I know he was a slave trader, but by the standards of his day, he was a generous philanthropist. I don't quite understand why we seek to judge people from 300 years ago by the moral standards of today. Seems to be slightly moronic. But that's what they did. They effectively put Edward Colston in the dock and said he was such a vile man that you got the right to damage his statue and chuck it in the sea.
No,
how far does that go? If there's a slave trader and I go up and kill him, is that justified? Am I going to get off?
Well, almost certainly not if there's a modern-day slave trader. Well, how they got off is a matter between the 12 men and women on the jury, and that's how the system works. It's completely private and confidential, so we have absolutely no idea.
But why? Why would you suggest? Well, we know what the defence was. They bought the defence. The defence was this guy was so terrible they had the right to damage his statue. That was the defence. So that's what they bought.
Well, you're saying all of this without the benefit of having sat through a trial which lasted.
Well, I read the reports.
Well, of course you read the reports. And frankly, I've done that many high-profile trials in my career where the reports in the media bear absolutely no relationship to what actually happened in the court.
Well, what did they do, Chris? When they pulled the statue down, kicked it around, poured paint over it, threw it into the sea, what did they do? What were they doing? That strikes me that's breaking the law, isn't it?
Well, obviously not according to this jury.
Well, that's bizarre and absurd, and people think it's ridiculous.
They didn't just read the media headlines. They listened to the judge.
People think it's ridiculous, though, Chris.
I don't think it's ridiculous.
No, but millions do.
Well, millions do, but I suspect millions, if they found themselves in front of a jury, and they would want that jury to exercise their conscience and their values in accordance with their duty as jurors, not to be swayed by public opinion, the media and politicians. And that, sadly, has been what this Conservative government has got on the bandwagon to try and criticise ordinary members of the public doing their public duty, compelled to do so. They have no choice. You have to be on a jury.
Right.
You can't say no. They've gone along, they've done their duty, and they've been slaughtered by the media and by politicians who should know better.
Well, so what about the judge? I don't think the judge should have allowed them to go down that road. I think the judge should have said, look, the way I see it, Chris, is, I'm not being a sort of furious colonel from Tunbridge Wells about this, but, by all means, give the Colston 4 a token fine for £1 each or something. That would be fine by me. But don't tell me they didn't break the law there. That was criminal damage. It was obvious.
Well, you say that. Once again, you've seen a small extract of the video footage. You haven't heard all of the evidence across the case. Once again, you can laugh, Kevin, and your listeners won't realise that you're laughing, but you can laugh all you like. The truth is, videos do lie. You see one angle, you see one impression. It doesn't necessarily tell the whole story. We know this as lawyers, day in, day out, seeing video evidence from different angles, hearing the perspective of people in different places. That doesn't always tell the story that you think it tells. And that's why we have juries to listen to all the evidence, not just the snippets that are chosen on the news, the whole of the evidence. And they come to their conclusion in good faith and in accordance with their duties. And if we start chipping away at that, I'll tell you what, it'll be a society that you won't want to live in, Kevin, and most of people who are listening to this programme won't want to live in.
Well, we'll have a chat. I'm only laughing because I knew this would be the line you take, and I knew I wouldn't agree with you. But of course,
I'm not going to let you be in the. I'm not letting you be in the Talk Radio 2 now.
Yeah, you mean I've been chucked out of the Talk Radio 2? Damn. Let's have a chat very soon about the Shadwell 3 as well, because it's a similar case. It's great to talk to you though, Chris. Very entertaining. Thank you very much. Chris Daw there, QC, lawyer, author, and broadcaster. Not a man I like him a lot, but not a man I often agree with, as you just said.